After the latest Pac-12 board meeting, which came a day late, it looks like the media talks might go into April. It also looks like that might be just okay.
Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with our beloved Conference of Champions. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show. We're almost to 2,300 on YouTube. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. Thank you, sort of, to the Pac-12 CEOs, board, group, whatever you want to call them, for meeting, because they were supposed to meet on Tuesday, and instead they met on Wednesday. So when they didn't meet on Tuesday, I, of course, went into semi-panic mode of like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? Why would that happen? They were just doing it a day later, so probably just normal procedural, schedules align better, all that sort of stuff. But there were a couple interesting tidbits there. Also in the Pac-12, Kirk Risa is in the transfer portal. Got to talk about that later for some hoops. But John Wilner tweeted on Wednesday morning that the Pac-12 board met this morning. I'm told presidents received a, quote, positive update and the process will continue. Next board meeting is second week of April. So the timeline here is looking like it might get dragged out, which, as I have discussed before, can indicate that there might be problems on the media front in terms of how valuable of a contract they're actually going to be able to get. The other thing that I have suggested here that Wilner is now reporting, and I tend to trust John Wilner here, he said not just that they might finish before their next meeting, the media deal, or they might finish after, so this could very well go into April, but it doesn't worry me as much because he said something that I've speculated about before. He said, the only thing I know for certain and have been told by multiple sources for weeks is the negotiations with Apple and Amazon take much longer than with ESPN because they don't have contractual templates for college football deals. So every step goes back to the lawyers for review. I think when it's all said and done, this is what we're going to look at as one of the biggest reasons why the deal, not getting the figures that George Kliavkoff is perhaps looking for or wanting or that he promised or anything like that, that could be a part of it too. But I think this complicating factor is going to be one of the reasons that we look back and say that's why this process took so longer. I talked about it before. Wilner's now hearing it, and I think it makes a lot of sense because this is a brand new endeavor, right? When you go and negotiate with ESPN, with Fox, with CBS, NBC, anybody like that who have been in the sports broadcasting space for a long time, you're just readjusting dollar figures. But getting a streaming partner involved, like Apple or Amazon, the way, we expect one or both of them to be, I'm hoping for Amazon personally, that is a brand new endeavor. Pun intended, because of, Endeavor is the PR firm that the Big 12 hired to try and tank the Pac-12. But that is a brand new thing. So all the little logistical details that most people are not talking about, that are not sexy, that are not flashy, that are not substantive, that most of us probably wouldn't even be able to understand if we read them. All that stuff takes a lot of time, right? Contract rights, broadcasting, equipment, announcers, like you just go down the list. Everything that goes into putting a college football game in front of you on television or streaming is an extremely intensive and extensive process. And it requires a lot of manpower, and it requires a lot of legal jargon because these rights are so very, very finicky. So I completely buy that report from Wilner because I think, to me, it makes a lot of sense that when you're going about starting something brand new, it's going to be more difficult than companies who have done it before and who are essentially, like the Big 12, for instance, was able to basically just extend its previous deal with ESPN, and I think, and Fox is partially involved as well. They were able to just extend that deal and readjust the dollar figures without Oklahoma and Texas. Well, that's a pretty simple calculation. But the Pac-12 that is, I think, going to add a couple schools, and we're getting a big indicator on that front, which I am so here for, and I'll talk about in just a moment. When you have to incorporate not just new schools, assess what their value is according to the networks or whoever's working the deal and such, and whoever's going to be involved with it, you have to situate that, and you're working with a streaming partner. So I think it does make some sense. Like I was tearing my hair out when I saw that they weren't meeting on Tuesday, going, oh my gosh, are we going to just keep kicking this way down the road and go all the way to, I think sometime in June is when a school would have to let the conference know that they won't be returning, right? You have to give like a year and a few months of advance notice minimum. So I think that is the most logical. That's the Occam's razor explanation here, right? The simplest explanation is the most likely one. I think that's completely possible. Now, one thing that they're having to finagle with here as a conference is how they tie in expansion. And a question came in the other day via Twitter. Remember, you can always ask me a question. YouTube comments, Twitter at smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. Twitter mentions DMs wide open. Anthony C says, it's unreal how long this is taking. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Like, I understand it on the one hand, but if you had told me in January, hey, you're going to be talking about the Pac-12 media deal in February, I would have said, oh, okay. Yeah, that's probably getting to the end of it there, right? But if you told me end of March, we'd still be chatting. Anyway, Anthony's question. It's unreal how long this is taking. Question. Will the media deal numbers and new conference members be announced simultaneously or consecutively? Based on, the number of times I've seen the word complicated, complex, details, and final stages thrown out by people close to the situation in the last couple of weeks, I imagine it's going to be simultaneous. Because to me, I think you could have it drawing on even longer if you were also working on adding new schools, right? And then trying to work out how you want to announce this stuff. Do you go media deal and then teams, or teams and then media deal, or do you try to do it all at once? Coordinating that media push from a conference perspective is not as easy as you or I just going and sending out a tweet. It does not work like that. It is far more labor intensive and coordinated and such. So the timing here again leads me to believe that they are going to announce them simultaneously. I have long said, though there are a number of appealing candidates, some who I'd be down for, that the Pac-12 probably is not going to consider, at least in this round of realignment talks. The top two schools are probably San Diego State and SMU, which make a lot of sense. And we got more evidence that San Diego State is, shall we say, on the precipice of joining the Pac, which I am very much here for. And I will tell you why after I tell you about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. The tournament is heating up. There's only one Pac-12 team left, but there are 15 other teams as well. And it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. You can bet on everything from the money line, point scorers, threes drain. You can combine them for a same-game parlay. Do whatever you want. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. When you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, San Diego State fans, I know you're out there. I know you listen, and I very much appreciate it. I have gotten nothing but warm feelings and sentiments from San Diego State fans out there regularly, and I am so here for it. And by the way, here's what else I'm here for. San Diego State University president Adela De La Torre went on the radio affiliate, the official broadcast partner of San Diego State Athletics, and was on with the sports talk guys there, and had some rather interesting words to say, including, quote, "We are going to move forward, I think, in the not too distant future with an opportunity." Now, the other thing is, one of the radio hosts suggested, that they were ready to make the Power 5 jump, and he said, what if the Pac-12 or the Big 12 were to come calling? She mentioned the Pac-12 by name, not in the sense of we are going to the Pac-12. Like, she didn't state it outright, but he was kind of presenting both conferences as an opportunity for her to talk about, and she ran with one much more than the other, and that was the Pac-12. So you got to listen to these little tiny details sometimes to find these sorts of nuggets. And, a reason that I'm excited about the prospect of adding San Diego State is two or threefold. I don't know. But number one, they want to be at the Power 5 level. And that matters. And she was asked the question, what role does athletics play in your school's success? And I don't think every president, every administration at universities across the country, I have seen it with a lot of schools, they don't all care as much as places like San Diego State do. And if you're the Pac-12, you want to add schools that care. Like, that's part of the calculation, right? You got to have the money. You got to have the academic standing. You got to make geographical sense. You got to bring something to the table. But you also have to have an investment, right? Like, Rice is a tiny school, but academically it's a great fit in the Pac. But do they have a real commitment to athletics? No, not really, which is why they're so down on my list of potential expansion teams now and in the future, because I just haven't seen it. They haven't been able to make good hires. They haven't been super relevant. Their women's basketball team was good this year in the WNIT. I think they ended the year like 23-10, and they lost their last game of the year against Oregon. That's the only reason I know about it. But again, good for them and such. But football and men's basketball are the sports that are the most important when you're talking about these considerations. And I just haven't seen it consistently. But San Diego State, I've seen it. I've seen them finish in the top 25. I've seen them win the Mountain West. I've seen them beat Pac-12 schools. I've seen them make the Sweet 16 as they did this year. And so when she was asked, President De La Torre, what role does athletics play in your school's success? I loved this quote. She said, "It's not only the front porch, but the place to open the door." Which is kind of the same thing. But basically, she was trying to expand upon an old adage that I've heard several times in, working in college athletics as I do. Athletics is the front porch of your university. And that's why these hires matter so much, right? And why coaches get paid so much more than professors who are dealing with more students and are involved with more things. But coaches make more because it is such a strong selling point for your school that if you prioritize it correctly, then it is a tremendous benefit for everybody across the board. She talked about how it creates a partnership with businesses and industry, and talked about the dynamic that I was just mentioning of how athletic success leads to academic success. That's what I want to hear from my president or any Pac-12 president joining or potentially joining the Pac-12. That's what I want to hear. And I don't think that every administration across the country, I mean, maybe they could, give lip service on that front, but the energy seems to be there. Her desire seems to be there. They want to be an R1 institution. They want to be at the Power 5 level. They're very ready to do this. Here's the other thing, and why I'm so ready for the Aztecs to get into the Pac-12. And by the way, I didn't forget about you, SMU. I'm excited about that prospect too. But this is kind of personal, but I can't be the only person who feels this way. I'm stoked about the idea of adding San Diego State because I freaking love the city of San Diego. It is excellent. Snapdragon, which President De La Torre talked about extensively as well, looks awesome. And San Diego is a beautiful place for sports, and it's an awesome city to go visit. And as I think in the future, many of you know I'm an Oregon fan. The prospect of going down to San Diego for a weekend and going to watch, Oregon play San Diego State, or if I'm in the area, somebody else, whatever. But football game on Saturday, enjoy the town on Friday night, maybe go play Torrey Pines on Sunday. There's a bunch of great golf down there. I'm a huge golfer, lots of sunshine. Everything about San Diego as a city, as a university, just feels Pac-12. I think it's such a seamless fit. There is a gap, even with SMU, who I'm a fan of adding, right? I'm a big fan of adding SMU. I think they bring a lot to the table. But there's even a gap between SMU and San Diego State in terms of the most logical fit, Now, to hell with Los Angeles is terrible. It's not. But I do prefer San Diego to Los Angeles, just on a realistic note. I've been to Los Angeles and had a fun time, and there are great golf courses there. But, Torrey Pines is a public course in San Diego. So the idea of taking a trip down to, if San Diego is good enough for Ron Burgundy, it's good enough for the Pac-12. I think that's the most succinct way to put it. And I'm just all on board, and I hope this stuff gets announced soon because I want it to be a flood of San Diego State fans coming in to listen to the podcast. I like you guys. I really, really do. And girls and everybody else. I just like everybody come on board, welcome in. I love San Diego. I mean, I just had that thought before I came on to record the episode. Like, man, go down on like Thursday, maybe golf on Friday, go to the game on Saturday, maybe golf on Saturday too, maybe golf on Sunday again. San Diego's awesome. Can't beat it. Cannot beat it. Heck, if it's the right time of year, if the Mariners were playing the Padres, I got my Mariners shirt on right now. What if the Mariners are playing the Padres? A round of golf on Friday, a football game, and maybe another round of golf on Saturday, and a Mariners-Padres game at Petco on Sunday. You know what that is? A great time. And you know what college athletics is fundamentally about? Having a great time. And you can have a great time in San Diego. Everybody can. Everybody likes it down there. Who doesn't? Southern California, for goodness sakes. All right, so that's my San Diego State plug and pitch of the day. But I like hearing all that stuff from the president, and based on what we're hearing from the conference, kind of seems like their interests are going to be aligned. So hopefully we get to have that finalized here at some point. Let's move over to basketball, where, surprising piece of news, Arizona, the Pac-12 tournament champions, number 2 seed who famously lost to a Sweet 16 team in the 15-seeded Princeton Tigers, are losing Kirk Risa, who is a 37% three-point shooter and is going to be a highly coveted transfer. Now, I truly wonder if a school like a Kansas, for instance, that came in and grabbed Remy Martin, had him as their 6th man after getting from Arizona State, helped ride that all the way to the national championship last year. I wonder if a school like that isn't going to look at a guy like Kirk Risa and say, yeah, we'll take a solid point guard who's also a knockdown shooter. But this is a guy who could fit on a lot of different schools. I was not expecting this at all. I'm not really sure why. I don't have any insight on that front. Arizona fans, if you like this, if you didn't like this, by all means, jump in the comments, let me know, because I'm very curious, because he was an integral part of what they did this year, right? I mean, Julius Tubelis is outstanding. Everybody knows that. But then it was Kirk Risa for Arizona. Like he was such a key piece, and I don't doubt Arizona's ability to either develop a guard to replace him or add one from the portal, but I did not see that coming. That's somebody on the market that I think would be pretty enticing for a number of Pac-12 schools. I mean, Oregon could use shooting. Oregon State could use talent. You just go up and down the list. Washington State. I think there are, and any school could take a guy like that. You always take a guard who can hit threes. A good ball handler who can hit threes. You got value on just about any team in the country. So another piece of Pac-12 basketball news. I'm going to metaphorically toot my own horn here. That was me grabbing a horn and, the little squeeze thing at the end and going beep, beep, something like that. Anyway, so I was talking with Richie Bradshaw the other day of Locked On Sun Devils, and we were discussing the Bobby Hurley situation. I said, man, that's kind of a tough spot to be in, because what do you do? What do you do? He's in a contract year. He just got you the NCAA tournament, but there have been some disappointing years. Tournament didn't go as you wanted to. Like, what do you do? And I said, look, I'd give him a short extension that you could then get out of, because that allows you to see definitively, as a basketball program, is this the right guy to lead our school's men's basketball team? Or was this a flash in the pan, right? Is he going to get to the tournament next year? Or is he going to go back to, having a sub 500 record in conference play, in which case you'd probably move on. But Arizona State signed him to a 2-year extension. I think he had one more year left on his deal, but they signed him to a 2-year extension, nothing major, just a couple of years to give him that cushion, right? And that's part of, I think, recruiting as well, is if you go into a recruit's home and you say, look, I'm going to be here. But then if they hear that, like, well, you're in the last year of your contract, you don't have an extension, like, it's tough, as Art Howe, portrayed by the late Dustin Hoffman in Moneyball, said, it's hard to manage a team under the cloud of a 1-year contract. And in this instance, Billy Beane, Ray Anderson, the athletic director at Arizona State, has gone ahead and said, okay, we'll give you a couple years and you got to prove it. And I think he's going to have to prove it. But this is the sort of move you want to see from Pac-12 basketball teams. Not overreacting to one tournament appearance and a win in a first 4 game. Saying, okay, that's encouraging, but we need to see more before we really commit to you. That's how Pac-12 basketball can get on the right foot. And big picture in that space, I would love for the conference to be better at basketball. And I think it's in the league's best interest to do so. Financially, visibility-wise, reputation, I think that all plays a part. Football is more important, but it's not as if basketball doesn't play a factor here. I mean, March Madness is a big, big thing. The Pac-12 only having one team in the Sweet 16, San Diego State. I'm kidding, it's UCLA. But you get the point. That is not where you like to be as a conference. And we've seen them capable of doing more than that, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, they had, I think, three or four in the Sweet 16. But then things have kind of taken a step back. USC lost in the first round. Oregon State has, unfortunately kind of bottomed out. I wonder if they're going to make a change. But I thought of this question and thought I would bring it up with all of you. What does a good basketball conference look like in the Pac-12? Right? And let's go beyond 2023 because you can't fix this in a year. So let's take out USC and UCLA, and let's say we add San Diego State and SMU. So San Diego State, a perennial tournament team and top 25 caliber school, and Arizona needs to be your flagship school. They've got the best history. They've got a great coach. Of the remaining teams, I mean. And I think they've got great potential. They prioritize basketball very heavily. Putting Arizona on a nationally televised college basketball game is great for the Pac-12. They've got great fans, great support, really good team. I know they lost in the first round this year, but I've seen Mike Krzyzewski lose to Lehigh. So don't tell me that Arizona stinks or that Tommy Lloyd's no good as a coach. It's just simply inaccurate. So I think Arizona needs to be your number one. I do think Oregon needs to be your number two because Dana Altman's got a great reputation as a head coach. And we've seen him fulfill great potential as the head coach of that program as well, where they regularly made Sweet 16s. They made an Elite Eight, then they made a Final Four. And the last couple of years, it's dropped off. They've missed the tournament the last 2 seasons for various reasons that I could talk to you for 30 minutes about. But basically, they need to get back to being a tournament team and being just a top 20 caliber program because that's what they should be. There's no reason for Oregon, with the amount of money they have at the university and the caliber of players they can bring in, the coach they have, there's no reason they should not be in the top 20 nationally, consistently, right, in terms of the AP. So I think you need to have Oregon get back to being a regular Sweet 16 and above caliber program. So Arizona, Oregon, San Diego State, that'd be a good place to start. But more work would need to be done. Like, this is what I think the conference would need to get to basketball-wise to be in a place where I would say, yeah, it's a good basketball conference and it's, living up to its potential here. I think you need one of the mountain schools, Colorado or Utah, to become tournament caliber consistently. I think you need one of the Bay Area schools to figure it out, and I'm not optimistic on that front, unfortunately, but you'd like to have that as well, draw in that TV market as much as you can. And then between Arizona State, Washington State, and UW, become a perennial tournament team every year. That's what you need to be a good conference. You don't have to have 8 or 9 teams in the league, but you'd like to get at least half. This year they got 4. They were kind of fortunate to get 4. Arizona State almost didn't get in. I thought they should have. I think they proved that they were good enough to do so. But without USC and UCLA, when you get to 12 teams, you want to be putting about half the league into March Madness. And I think every year that's got to be Arizona and Oregon at the top. San Diego State's got to be there at some point in time. And then you need one of the Washington schools, one of the Bay Area schools, and one of the mountain schools. To not be able to make the tournament once every 3 years, to be there just about every year. To where it's, what Oregon is right now, which is not making the tournament, is an aberration and a disappointment. That's going to take time. It might take coaching changes at some places, but that's what a good basketball conference would look like to me. And unfortunately, we don't have that right now. But there's always potential. There's always hope, Rebellions are built on hope. All right, I'm done for the day. Appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.